Hello, my name is Angela Dreher, and this is Franklin Boulevard Media. I grew up in Gastonia, North Carolina on North York Street. The house has been in my family for over 120 years, and that's where I reside now with my mom. I loved growing up in Gastonia as a child. I grew up on was called the block back then, right down the street from Big Daddy's and across the street from St. Peter's Amazon Church. My home church is Friendship Baptist Church, and we would just walk to church on Sunday. I grew up when the square existed up on North York Street. We had our own businesses there, Lightner Cab Lot. We had restaurants. We had the Old Credit Union. I actually didn't go to town, which was Main Street, until I was about 9 years old. I didn't even know town existed. Well, I want to go all the way back to Miss Myrtle Hoffman's daycare. My brother and I attended Myrtle Hoffman daycare. Miss Myrtle Hoffman would come and pick us up in her little van, and I remember the days when she would be dressed up. She brought Fred Kirby to meet us when I was a little girl, and we thought he was going to bring the Little Rascals, but he didn't. So started out with Miss Myrtle Hoffman, then went on to Woodhill. And then they divided the line, and I had to go to Central Elementary. Went to Central until I went to Greer Junior High School back then, and then to Ashbrook High School. And I'm not biased, but all my children graduated from Ashbrook also. Initially, my plans were to just get a job, but there was an accounting instructor at Ashbrook who recognized my math skills. And she came to me one day and she said, "Angela, I think you should apply for college." And I hadn't even really thought about it because I was going to be the first generation college student in my family. And I went to the guidance counselor and she looked at my grades and she said, "Do you not know you're going to graduate with honors?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And she said, "Think about Belmont Abbey." And she helped me fill out the application. And Belmont Abbey accepted me. And I went home and told my mom I was going to college. At Belmont Abbey, I received my bachelor's in accounting with a minor in business computer science. So it's a long journey. Went to Belmont Abbey, accepted a job with the Internal Revenue Service. I was working at BB&T prior to that. I worked with the Internal Revenue Service for 10 years of my life as an auditor, and then I became a supervisor of revenue agents and auditors. But I kept waking up having dreams about the homeless, about children. I didn't know what it meant. I would get up during the middle of the night. I started journaling, and I would write down what I was seeing and going to scriptures about helping people. The Lord was always leading me to scriptures about train up a child in the way they should go and they won't depart from it, and scriptures about helping the people in need. So one morning I told my husband at the time, I said, "I'm going to quit my job." And he said, "You must have lost your mind." And my family thought so too, because I had a good job at the Internal Revenue Service. I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." I said, "But the Lord is telling me I've got to go help people." And my family, we had a cookout at my house, and my family said, "Charter Pines helps people when they've had a mental breakdown, and we know you've had one." So I left my job and helped my husband start a business, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to start an accounting firm. And it didn't work that way. I left my job, and I was on the board of directors at Friendship Baptist Church. We had a daycare center, and we had to let our director go, and the church asked me would I step in. And so I stepped in as the director, and I had to go back to school to get early childhood education. So I went ahead and just got the whole degree. So I ended up with an associate's in early childhood development, still having those dreams, and homeless people started knocking on the door of the daycare center, and I started by giving them food that we had left over from lunch. And then one day I was going out to the dumpster, and Mayor Jennifer Stokes was out in the parking lot. She had a meeting at the church, and we started talking, and she said, "I started in childcare." And I told her, I said, "Well, homeless people have been coming to the church." And she told me a story about she had been in New York City and encountered a pregnant homeless woman, and she didn't know how to help. And that had been with her for a long time, and she was starting a mayor's task force on homelessness. And she asked me, would I be interested in coming to a meeting? I went to a meeting, and within some months, I was chairing the mayor's task force on homelessness. My children and I would give out toboggans and gloves and blankets and stuff out of the back of my car. And I was at a meeting one day, and Kathy Howe, who ran Crisis Assistance Ministries, she said, Angela, you got to quit carrying your children around the homeless. You know, something's going to happen. She said, what do you want? I said, I want a place for the homeless to go during the day. She said, well, I have a space upstairs in the Crisis Assistance building. If you can do an entrance way on the outside, I'll let you use that space. And that's how my homeless ministry started. That's how I started as one. And the city of Gastonia gave me my first grant for $5,000. And I used it to build that door to come to the outside and stairs so people could come up in the building on airline. So I started with As One on November the 3rd, 2003, and operated the day shelter until March of 2016. The homeless started coming. We would do coffee. I added services as they had need. When you were at the Salvation Army, you had to go to look for work, and they had no bus tickets. So I started out with coffee, and I give you bus tickets to go look for work and a job search sheet. And the ministry just evolved from there. Everything that happened there, I evolved based on the need of the homeless person, and eventually wrote HUD grants and housed several people in the community. I served over 6,000 people while I ran As One Ministries for that 13-year period of time. I've settled 63 disability cases for the homeless for free, and help them to get back on their feet. It's just what I was called to do, because the story goes back to the men who used to hang out on the block. There was an old man named Mr. Archie who blew a harmonica when I was about 6, 7, 8 years old. When I got to be 12 years old, Mr. Archie was still blowing that harmonica. And there was another man, we used to run from him. We used to call him Van the Monkey Man. And he lived down the street. One Christmas, I asked my mom, I said, can I give them some fruit? And she let me. And it started from there. So here in our community, it's my belief that a standalone shelter is not the answer. And it's because you have different populations of homelessness. You've got the homeless population that are families and women. You've got a section of men. But here in Gastonia, I think we need a shelter. I think we need a shelter for the more stable individuals who are ready to make the next step to getting housing and jobs. I think that we need substance abuse treatment, and we need a substance abuse facility here, because we have a lot of homeless individuals and non-homeless who are using drugs. We have a high fentanyl overdose rate here. Almost weekly, you have an overdose at QT. I was at the winter shelter last winter at First United Methodist, volunteered there. Even people were overdosing, there in the parking lot and stuff. So we need substance abuse. And we need mental health services. And some people have mental illness and substance abuse issues. Some people just have mental health. Some people just have substance abuse. But you got to identify the populations. And so I believe there should be a men's shelter, a women and children shelter, and services to help those who suffer from substance abuse and from mental illness, so that you can concentrate on what's the needs of the people. I've had a lot of experience with homelessness. You need a combination of things. You need housing and apartments that are affordable for those who can maintain. And that can be in a complex, much like Howland Hills or somewhere like that, where the people who are fairly stable can live. But you also need housing, homes for families that have children, and then consideration for tiny homes, consideration for pods, because some of those things are being used in Greensboro to house individuals, the ones who can't maintain the place, don't really clean up and all that good stuff, but they have a place that they can go in at night, shut the door, stay safe, get up the next day and keep on going until a collaborative effort comes together where you have the city, the county, hospital, police, banks, businessmen, and the community to come out and say, we're going to come up with a plan and we're going to decide who's going to take what piece. I don't think it's a situation where one government entity can run a shelter. A shelter can cost you anywhere from $500,000 up to more than that, depending on how many people you house. And we need to be able to hire qualified people. You hear a lot of people saying, well, the shelter can be operated by volunteers. You know what volunteering means? I can show up when I want to, and I don't have to come if I don't want to. And that happens a lot of time because people get burned out. People think it's an easy population to deal with, and it's not. You have some people who get into homelessness and they leave and they're out of it in a minute's time. They work the system. I have people that I house that now own houses, drive by, own their cars, have gone back to school. So some people can do that. There is a population of homeless, though, that want to stay where they are. And you have to be able to respect those individuals too and let them do it, because it's like getting clean for the first time. Everybody's time is different. People get mad when people stay on drugs and alcohol for years. But I tell people all the time, your clean date is different from anybody else's clean date. And a person's rock bottom, you say, if I got down like that, that would be my rock bottom. Everybody's rock is different. And people have to be respectful of that, because even when I house people, there would be people I would have to exit from housing because they just couldn't do it. Even with all the resources being given, it just wasn't their time. We didn't fall out over it. They just came back to the shelter and became a day shelter client and went on their merry way. And I moved somebody else in and saw if it was your turn. And a lot of people were successful with that through the Housing First initiative. So like I said, homelessness is a complex issue. It takes planning, it takes working together, and it takes everybody taking a piece. Because it's my belief in the current economy that we live in, and with budget cuts being the way that they are, is that we're going to see a tremendous increase in the homeless population, and we're going to have to address it. And I think we're going to have to go back to the old-timey way, where family looks after family and where people help other people to get to the next step where they need to go. Because when I was growing up, we had a crazy Uncle Joe. Guess what? We kept crazy Uncle Joe at home. And we worked around it. Everybody knew Uncle Joe was gonna throw something, turn over a table, but he was our Uncle Joe. And I think in today's society, we've lost that connection. And I'm hoping that there'll be a turnaround and we'll have more compassion for our people, not so for somebody to become enabled and not for a person to be taken advantage of, because you gotta have rules, but to at least try to help someone get back to where they need to go. I would like to be part of the collaboration to organize a plan to move forward with helping the homeless and people get affordable housing. I currently serve on the Housing Authority Board, so I've been serving there for about 5-6 years. We issue bonds for people who need bonds for low income or below 60% of median income, 30% of median income, which always allocates a portion for people with that income range. I think we should do more of that. And so we got to come up with creative ways. One of the things that I've thought about too, we have a lot of people on the streets of Gastonia who all get disability checks, some of them. Gonna have to have some partnership where people share housing, or you have a house and you get a bedroom, you get a bedroom, you get a bedroom. We have common kitchen, common bathroom areas, and everybody puts money toward the rent. But that has to be when the person is clean. Because if you got one with a habit, they're gonna try to spend their share of the money. So you've got to come up with some creative ways to house. And I think those are discussions that we gotta have, but we've gotta have the staffing for that. Because you can't get quality help and pay pennies when you want gold services. You see what I'm saying? You can't pay for gold with copper. And so, we have to really think through the process, pay a fair wage, get good staff in there who have a commitment and have the desire to serve the population that needs the most help. I think that everyone's concerned. People don't like to be approached at the gas station. People don't want to feel bad and have to look away when they see somebody standing on the corner with a sign. People want to know how to help. Someone asked me just last week, what do I do when I see somebody coming down Main Street and I don't know how to help them? And I said, okay, call. Here's the phone number for HealthNet Gaston. They keep a registry of the homeless. They can help direct some of the homeless toward housing. If you want to come there and help, with the services. Now, they don't have resources for everybody, but they can help some. And so just getting the word out there, where can people get help? And people being honest about what their issues really are. That's the hard part, because sometimes people live in a fantasy world when the true issue is you need to make the next step to get to the next place. So I think homelessness can be resolved. I think it's going to become a bigger challenging issue just because of our economic situation here in the community. I'm concerned because when you see some of the executive orders that have come down, cuts in housing, cuts with money going to Section 8, cuts in food stamp, now to the point you can't buy snacks with food stamps any longer. It's going to take the community out there helping our brother. So I'm going to put a little rep in here for Mount Zion Restoration Church, because that's where I attend, and we give away food every week to thousands of people on Thursday that come through that line from every walk of life. I'm talking about from people who have good jobs, but it's so tight in this economy, just trying to make it and make it to that next payday. It's going to take services like that being out there. It's going to take some churches opening up their door other than on Sunday to shelter when it's needed.